Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our newscast starring myself, Jacob Rockwood, and you'll also be hearing from my partner a little bit later, Jonathan Brunkart. Today, we would like to discuss the topic of politics and sport. It's become pretty evident lately that people have a bunch of different opinions on if there's any room for politics within sport. However, with the recent current events going on in the world, from the police brutality that we're seeing to the Black Lives Matter movement, as well as to how our country has been dealing with COVID-19 as a whole, it is pretty clear that there's been quite a few athletes that have been using their media platforms and the attention that they get from being professional athletes to express their political beliefs, and we'll dive deeper into that looking at a few different stories. Now, before we can look at how politics and sport relate and how athletes are using their platform, we first must understand the basic concepts of politics and power. According to Sport and Society, Issues and Controversies, politics can be defined as processes of organizing social power and making decisions that affect people's lives in the social world. As stated, politics play a large part in a person's everyday life, whether they like it or not. On top of that, for the majority of people across the globe, sports play a large part in their life as well. In saying that, I will touch on the concept of power. Again, according to the Sports Society Issue and Controversies, power can be defined as the ability to influence people and achieve goals, even in the face of opposition from others. Considering the fact that sports are a part of most people's everyday life, their favorite athlete or favorite team could hold some power over them. With that being said, athletes have serious ability to influence their fan base and give their respective opinions to them on matters they deem important to society's well-being. Now, for our top story. One of the major news stories that has come up regarding politics and sports has to do with the NBA's promotion of voting. An article in Sports Illustrated explains that at a young age, LeBron James did not see the point in voting. In fact, he stated, "Voting was not on my mind." Another known NBA player, known as Fred VanVleet, also stated, "I grew up in a place where you feel hopeless. No matter who the president is or who is in office, nothing changes." However, it has been very obvious that these mindsets have changed. Inside the bubble, it appears though that the players had two objectives. The first objective was on the court, and that was to win an NBA championship. The second objective was classified as off the court, and that was to change the world in some way. A lot of the players decided to try to change the world by encouraging everyone to vote so that they could have their voices heard. They started to quickly realize that these two objectives started to blend together though. Examples of this were there were various signs throughout the arena saying vote. The players also would wear warm-up shirts that expressed the same message. On top of that, several players would use press conferences and social media posts to encourage everyone to vote. In retrospect, it appeared to work, considering more than half of the NBA arenas ended up being used for voting centers. In addition, LeBron James started a More Than a Vote campaign prior to coming to the NBA bubble, which resulted in 40,000 volunteer poll workers and offered free rides to voting centers. The players also realized they had to lead by example for this initiative to work. The players in 2016 only had 22% of them registered to vote, whereas this year there was 96% of the players that registered to vote. Now for our second top story.
Athletes' involvement in politics has become far more prominent as the years have gone on. Not too long ago, mixing sport and politics was somewhat rare. Nowadays, however, sports and politics seem to go hand in hand. An article by CNN details activism that some very prominent athletes have taken part in not only in the US, but around the world. LeBron James has done an immense amount of things when it comes to activism, whether that be opening and funding a school in his hometown of Akron, Ohio, or playing a large part in the Black Lives Matter movement. He has also used his platform to urge his fellow African Americans to vote, stating, "We believe that black people, our community, we've been pushed away from our civic duty. We've been fed misinformation for many years, and I'm in a position where I can educate people." His involvement in the world of activism has led many to believe that James may just pursue a career in politics when he retires, whenever that day may come. Another example would be Naomi Osaka paying homage to police brutality victims at each of her 7 US Open matches. This doesn't only take place in the US either. Manchester United's star striker, Marcus Rashford, has also done his part in the world of activism, trying to help feed the hungry youth of England. Rashford grew up poor on the streets of Manchester, often finding himself going to bed hungry or without a good meal. On Twitter, Rashford stated, "Put aside all the noise, the digs, the party politics, and let's focus on reality. A significant number of children are going to bed tonight, not only hungry, but feeling like they do not matter because of comments that have been made today." These comments came after a bill he presented to the House of Commons, which was aimed towards feeding hungry youth throughout the holiday season was turned down.
Coming up next, we have an interview with close friend and teammate Austin Ward. We have Austin Ward here. We're going to ask him a couple questions. First question, Ward, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks for having me on. First off, my name's Austin Ward. I'm a junior on the St. Joe's men's soccer team. Captain this year. I'm also a finance and accounting major here at St. Joe's.
Okay, cool. So first question we have for you is, as an athlete, do you feel like there's any room for politics in sport?
I absolutely do. Based on what we've seen in this past year with the COVID, with the Black Lives Matter, with the polarizing election, I think we've seen that a bunch of athletes have had their influence on how people think and how the country should be run, both in politics and in society as well.
Fair enough. Do you feel like after seeing, you mentioned the NBA kind of with the Black Lives Matter movement and stuff, do you feel like that was overbearing at all, or do you think that they should continue to do that type of stuff?
From my personal opinion, so I'm from Massachusetts, right outside of Boston, and there was a bunch of protests going on there for the Black Lives Matter movement, and I thought that when players like Marcus Smart, players like Jaylen Brown got involved, the amount of change and the amount of support for those movements and for the politics involved went through the roof. So I don't think it was overbearing at all. I think it actually helped spearhead the movement. And I also think that those players speaking their mind was a catalyst to drive change forward in this country.
Awesome. Well, that is all the question we have for you. Thank you for coming on.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, not a problem.
Now, why is all of this so important? Sport is a cultural phenomenon that brings people from all different backgrounds together. Athletes do a great job of taking advantage of that and further stressing the concept of unity. In times like this, where we are faced with much controversy in our country, whether that be with the election, unwanted suppression of certain races, or the pandemic, world-famous athletes are able to bring us together and provide a sense of safety and normalcy. In doing so, they provide their opinions on politics from the perspective of a non-politician. These athletes oftentimes state their opinions not based on the preference of a party, but for what they see is beneficial for themselves and their surrounding community. Is that to say that they aren't pushing the ideas that align with their party's beliefs? No. But when athletes speak on political issues, it seems to be far more personal than when a politician speaks and takes sides on an issue. With that being said, do we think that sports and politics should be two separate entities with no connection? No. In today's society, they hold the same weight in a person's life. Participating in activism can be beneficial for the greater society as an athlete, but there is always the worry that you'll receive too much backlash. However, that doesn't seem to stop the athletes of today. As previously mentioned, on the field, these athletes are focused on the task at hand, which is winning. However, off the field, not only are they focused on perfecting their craft, but they are also focused on creating a better, more inclusive world to live in. The world of politics is often contentious and unforgiving. But with our favorite athletes involved, it helps us see both sides and come together as one. No matter the issue at hand, athletes from every sport do an amazing job of using their platform to voice their opinions on what's right and what's wrong in this world. Even if we don't agree with them, we must commend their efforts. That being said, some may say, shut up and dribble. But we, on the other hand, would rather say, keep doing what you were doing and make the world a better place. We hope you enjoyed this newscast. And until next time, this is Jonathan Brunkart
and Jacob Rockwood, and thank you for tuning in.